Have you ever looked at chunky statement jewelry and thought, oh, that would be too hard to DIY? I'm here to tell you that all you need are the right tools, and it's easy. Hey there, Sandy here with another jewelry tutorial at keepsakecrafts.net. This bracelet is going to be based on 16 gauge wire. It's about 1.3 millimeters in diameter. In comparison, 18 gauge wire is about 1 millimeter in diameter. The nice thing about 16 gauge is that it will hold its shape nicely for you. You can do just a little bit of simple forming and forging, and your bracelet's going to be nice and solid, and yet just a little bit pliable so you can shape it and make it work for you. This was my first sample I made. These are lampwork beads. They're kind of wonky because they're some of my first lampwork beads that I made. This bracelet's perfect for lampwork though because they have larger holes. That's something you'll want to consider, that the holes have to be able to have 16 gauge wire go through them. In fact, I bought this very pretty strand of pearls just because I love the colors, the pink and the purple, and thought it would go gorgeous with copper, and it would. And then it was funny, I bought it and I woke up in the night and said, that wire is not going to go through pearls, silly. And indeed, it doesn't. Even though these actually have some fairly large holes for pearls. So these will have to be for another project. So I'm not going to use these. I found some other beads to use. So that's kind of your first job, is to find some beads that you like. I'm using bare copper wire because it's copper all the way through. It doesn't have a colored coating on the outside that can be scratched or chipped or worn off by your tools. It's copper all the way through. You can certainly try this with other wires, but you may find that you'll have some marring in your wire. And I love the look of it, so we're using copper. What you'll need to do is find a bracelet that is skinny and thin and just fits. So this little silver bracelet just fits me, and that is what you want. Alternately, you can use a tape measure and just take a measurement, but this is a real easy way to do it. And if you don't have a bracelet mandrel, you can find a jar that is the appropriate circumference, diameter, whatever. If you find one that works, you just want this bracelet to just fit on it, and that is going to be the spot that you mark. This is the inside diameter of your bracelet, and that's important when making a chunky bracelet. It's not the length that matters, it is the inside diameter, because if you take that bracelet apart, it's going to be a lot longer than this one because these beads have so much thickness. Whoop, I missed some. So here we go. So you just want to mark that on your mandrel. And this is just really useful to have. It's an easy way to do it. I'll have links to all of these tools and supplies, my 16 gauge wire. And you're going to cut a piece that goes around here about 1.5 times. So that's one, and this will be plenty. Make sure you use heavy enough wire cutters. I have one pair that is good up to like maybe 18 gauge, but they might be iffy for 16. So be nice to your tools and use heavy enough pliers. Next, I'm just going to cut this piece in half. One side will be the one that has our beads, and the other side will be the one that has the coils. Cut that. I'm going to shape both of these around the mandrel at that spot. So the easiest way to do that is to just hold it with your fingers near the ends. And I have a nylon mallet. You could also use a rawhide mallet, or you don't want to use like a chasing hammer because that will flatten and change the shape of the wire. What we're doing is just hardening it. We're conforming it to this mandrel, and that's gone a little off. So let's see if we can fix that. And also hardening it so that it will hold its shape as you're wearing it. Because if it bends and moves a lot, that will create weak spots. So I'm just tapping lightly to conform it to this shape and also to harden it. And repeat with the other piece of wire. Here are both of my pieces of wire, and I'm not really concerned about the ends so much as this middle section on both of them. So those are both shaped to that mandrel size. Now you can arrange your beads, your bead caps, your spacers, whatever looks good to you. And I just have a few examples here. These ones I got at Michael's, and they are the ones that I used on this bracelet. These also are from Michael's. You get the gold, the silver, and the copper, all antique finishes. I think these were from Michael's, these caps, and these are all from Michael's. So I'm going to put all these together in a configuration that I like. This would be a great place to use polymer clay beads if you have them. Because you can always ream out the holes and make them a little bit bigger just with a drill. If you love tutorials like this one that break down seemingly complicated steps and make them doable, consider supporting this channel by becoming a patron. Thank you to all you lovely people who already do so. And back to your video. When you get to a place where you think you're happy, just take a look at your mandrel and kind of compare it. It should be just a little bit less than halfway around. Even a third of the way around will do just fine for our purposes. Another thing you can use for spacers, which I did on this bracelet, is just some split rings. I have all of these split rings from one of my beadbox subscriptions, and I don't use them very often. So I actually use them here on the end as just kind of another spacer decoration. I think I'm not going to do that with this because I really like these, but you could certainly use split rings and fill in several. I think there are 5 on each end here, and they really add just some interest and movement and kind of a fun effect. I think I'll just stop with one of these little spacers on each end. That's pretty. I like that a lot. The next step is to use your round nose pliers and make a loop on each end. So I've started with this end, which has a nice flush cut. I'm just going to use my round nose pliers. These are actually a combination. They've got one flat jaw like chain nose and one round, which is nice because it doesn't dent the wire. If I had 2 rounds, it would dent the other side. I'm going to make these a good size, so maybe down here. And let me just grab it and keep turning until that flat edge meets itself. Then you can grab this and bend it back. And don't worry too much about closing that just yet. Now on this heavy gauge wire, that size loop uses about a little bit more than a ½ inch of wire. So I'll cut that at about 5/8 with the flush cut towards the wire I'm keeping. I don't think I'll need quite that much, but there. And repeat to make your other loop. Oh, that was just about right. Now you can have these loops going either way. Let's see. I like having them, if the bracelet's laying down, they are parallel with the plane of the bracelet, so I need to just give these a bit of a turn. This one's mostly okay. That one I just want to turn. See, so they're parallel with each other and with the rest of the wire going around. Now you can skip this next step if you want, but I really love the look of hammering the copper and giving it just a little bit of a texture. For that I have a sandbag and a bench block and a chasing hammer. I'm just going to hang my bracelet off the end, so I'm only hammering that loop of wire. And this is the hammer you use if you want to change the shape and texture of your wire. Flip it over Add a little texture to the other side. You can see that loop is opening as you do it. That just happens. Don't worry about it. And now you can go in, get out of there. Go in with the round nose pliers again and just close that loop one more time. And repeat to hammer the other loop in the same way. And here is just about half of your bracelet all done. Really very easy to do. The next thing we're going to do is make this coil for decorating the other side of the bracelet. I'm going to use 24 gauge copper wire to do that. Now you could wrap this by hand and just wrap it around your wire if you want to, but this is an inexpensive little tool. It's called either the coiling jig or the coiling gizmo. You can see it has 2 holes and it has 2 mandrels, and the smallest one is 16 gauge. It's just right for coiling a piece to fit our 16 gauge wire. I've actually already marked on here where I want to coil to, which is about a 5-inch piece. That'll be more than we need for our bracelet. Got my 24 gauge wire, and I'm going to leave it on the spool. Just give it a couple wraps up here. This will be waste, but you need this to anchor it. And I'm actually going to drop this spool down to the floor and just let it hang there. And I have a clamp that I'm going to use to clamp this tool to my table. And I move the camera for you. Sorry to get the edge of the table, but it has to be clamped to the edge in order to work. So slide this over so it's right against the edge of this little U shape. Hold the wire, and if you're left-handed, just flip it around so it's going the other way. Hold the wire with your non-dominant hand, hold this and start spinning with your dominant hand, and just press it lightly up against this and start forming your coils. And by having it pressed up against that, they should end up nice and neat. First few might be a mess until you get the rhythm. And you just hold it and spin. Just be watching that they don't start to stack up on top of each other, and if they're kind of spaced out, you can do that actually. Just press and squidge them all together. Oops, that's not good. We want a nice tidy coil. And it's best to just get a rhythm going. And I'm just letting the wire feed through my fingers. And my fingers will end up being a little cramped by the time I get down to, I don't need that full 5 inches. I don't know what I was thinking. My measurement. My initial measurement was way off. I had measured it for a bangle size, which is absolutely silly. It was way, way too big. It's kind of fun and satisfying. If you have one of these, I have done a video on how to make coiled coil beads, they're just beautiful. Well, I'll link to the video and you can watch it. So if that happens, it starts to stack up. Just back it off, pull off the wire, and just start again. That's all. It'll smooth out and you'll be fine. Seriously, this has got to be enough. I don't know why I said 5 inches. What is this? That is 3 inches. I'll do a tiny bit more since I know my wrist size is about 7 1/4, but I'm not going to use that, even half of that. I'll make it 3 1/2. But I was talking about the coiled coils. They're so cool. So you make a coil like this, then you put wire through it, and then you coil that whole thing, and it's just oh so cool looking. All right, I am going to stop there because that is plenty. So you can snip off that end. I don't think the coiling jig comes with this like this, by the way. I think my husband screwed it to a block of wood for me, or I did that, I don't know. But this is a good way of making it portable so you can put it wherever you want it. We'll snip off this little bit up here. Like I said, this little bit is waste. Now the biggest pain in the neck with this is getting your coil off the mandrel, because it just you wound it so nice and tight, it wants to stay there forever. It just is so happy there. So what you have to do is start twisting it, and you'll make it just a tiny bit bigger. And just give it a few twists. Yeah, you start trying to push it this way, it's not moving. So just give it a few twists. And you'll be in despair. It's not moving, it's not going anywhere. And you just keep twisting and pushing, and then suddenly it will slide off. You can kind of also do the little wiggle. Now you could wrap this on your 16 gauge wire. That would probably be an easier way, but it's not as hard as this, so it's just harder to control. So I'm just twisting it basically in the opposite direction that I twisted it on the mandrel, which is making it just a tiny bit bigger, and at some point it will just slide right off. Oh, I can feel it starting to go. And of course, this is another detail you can skip, but I just love the way that looks. There we go. There. Yay. Here's our other piece of wire. We need to make a loop in one end. And I need to, alright, I'm going to start with my end that has a flush cut already and make a loop just the way we did in the other one. And you can hammer this one as well if you want, or you can skip it. Slide on my coil. Isn't that just so cool? We're going to set this aside for a moment and make some jump rings. And there are lots of different ways you can make jump rings. You can use a little tool like this to wrap, but what I really enjoy using are I call them bail making pliers. I've seen them called lots of different things. We're going to use 18 gauge wire, and you want to make your jump rings about 7 or 8 millimeters inside diameter. These pliers have a 10, a 7, and a 5 millimeter mandrel, so we'll use that middle one, the 7. And if you use the technique right, you can make a never-ending coil of jump rings. You can make as many as you want. We only need, I think, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 for our bracelet. But you can make as many as you want. And the way it works is you start with the wire in between the jaws, and then you twist. And you just keep twisting, and you bring your new wire towards the handle part of your pliers. So that coil is going... No, it's got to stay on that mandrel though, if we want them to be round. There we go. Bring that new wire right beside the old. The first part will probably be a little wonky. And we just keep, I'm just twisting my wrist and bringing this towards me. So as they come off of this, it's fine, they're already the right shape. So you form them the right shape. So you can keep going and make as many as you want. So if we need 4 jump rings, make like 5 or 6 wraps, because there will be a little bit of waste. You'll see why. Alright, so now what we want are the 2 ends of our jump rings to both be flush so that they will fit together and close nicely. So we're going to skip this straight bit because we want it curved, and I'm going to cut down here. If you look at your pliers, there's a part that has a V, and there's a part that is flush. So we want the flush part towards the main coil of the wire, and the V towards that little bit that we're going to get rid of. And you just want to cut 1 piece of wire. So now that has a flush cut. Now we're going to flip these so they face the other way and cut right above that, lined up with it, the other piece of wire with the flush part facing. So what you should have, if you did it right, are 2 flush cuts. And that is 1 jump ring. Now there are lots of tools and jigs out there if you're making lots of jump rings, but if you're just making a few, this method is good. Now that wire you just cut off has a V cut because it was facing this inner part. So what we want to do is trim that off. So I'm facing the flush part again. Just going to put my finger to keep that little piece from flying. Turn the wire cutters the other way and cut the other ring. And just repeat. Cut off that little bit with the tip. Cut off that little bit, turn them, cut the ring off the coil. And if some of your ends aren't quite as flush as you'd like them to be, you can file them with a file and make them nice, because these are functional, but they're also a little bit decorative, so we want to make sure they're nice. So that's pretty good. Yeah. And when they both have nice flush cuts, did you hear that snick? They just like fit together beautifully. It's a nice tight seal, and I'm just doing this with my fingers. That's probably not ideal. But yeah, I don't really even need to file any. But if I did just a little file, usually the files only cut on the push, by the way. To make sure our jump rings are nice and strong and that they're going to hold our jewelry together securely, just harden them a little on a bench block with the nylon hammer. You could also flatten them and texture them with the chasing hammer and give them a bit more character. Just a couple taps. We'll flatten them out nicely and harden them so they'll be good and strong. Now that we have these things all made, we can start doing some assembly. I decided to use this little slide that came in a $1 bead box as a decorative element. I used one here as well. You could just use another 2 jump rings. You could make a 16 gauge jump ring. You could skip it altogether. I just really have enjoyed adding lots of different textures and interests to this. We're going to slide on 1/2 of the bracelet and this slider. Close it up. Make sure those are lined up. Repeat to add a second jump ring. Of course, you don't have to have 2, but not only does it make it more secure, I really love the look. Okay, and repeat to add this side with the 2 jump rings also to the slider. The next step is to add a toggle clasp. Now we could certainly make our own toggle clasp, and I will point you to a book that teaches wonderful techniques for making your own clasps out of wire, but today I'm just going to use a purchased one, same as I did in this bracelet. As much as I dislike split rings, they are very secure. So I have here some copper 6mm split rings, and I will use these to attach the loop half of my toggle, and I thought the heart kind of went well with the pink. These are a love-hate thing. I love how secure they are. I hate working with them. They're just kind of a pain. These are split ring pliers, which definitely help. And if you have trouble with keychains, I've used them to open keychains too when they were being difficult, which is always, isn't it? All right, we got one on, then we can slide the other on. And then make sure that's not going anywhere. And I can use my chain nose to just kind of twist that through. Okay, I'm going to just slide this coil out for a minute because it's going to get in the way. What we need to do is test the size of our bracelet. And unless you have 3 or 4 hands, I suggest some tape as a helper. Just tape your bracelet right on that line. That's going to be the inside diameter. Tape it right there. And now we can see exactly where we want this to fall. I want my loop to end just in here, just the tiniest bit of slack. So I'm going to cut this, like I said, about 1/2 inch for the loop. So I'm going to cut this right here. And I can take that off. Slide your wire coil on. So we'll bend that because we're not going to need that much. And now I want to take about 1/2 inch off of this end. Perfect. That is a flush cut, so we can grab our round nose pliers and make a loop and hammer it. Use the split ring to attach the toggle bar. One final detail is to go in with flat nose or nylon jaw pliers and really burnish down the end of your coil, both ends, so that they don't catch on anything. That would be unpleasant. So let's see how it fits. It's pretty easy to clasp because of the toggle. One thing I love about this style is I do love these bulky beads, but I hate wearing a bracelet like this when they're on the bottom because they're kind of lumpy and uncomfortable. So this has the very smooth coil on the bottom. And if you make it snug enough, I may have to go in and make this a little bit shorter. It seems to be just a bit long. But if you make it snug enough, it actually stays in place on your wrist and doesn't travel around. So if you find that it's a little big, you can just actually snip off that loop and snip off some more coil, make another loop, and keep adjusting it until it fits well. I always think it's better to err on the side of making it just a little bit too big to begin with, and you can always make it smaller. But now that you know these wire techniques, you need to check out all the wire wrap projects in this playlist that I put together for you. See you in the next video.